Let's do it.
All right. Welcome back to our loyal listeners to another episode of the ILBATD podcast. As always, your hosts, Nick, Cam, and Colin, are joined by first-time caller, long-time listener, Willie Walsh. Welcome
Huge
to the
fan, super fan,
podcast.
boys. Thanks
He
for
had,
letting me
he
on. Honored to be here.
had to wait until you got a win to come on the podcast.
You like that? I couldn't show up 0-4.
No, no, definitely not.
Well, let's launch into it here. Let me share my screen. And first game on tap is the aforementioned victory by the Buffalo Stackhouse over Big Nick Energy. Willie, what were your thoughts on this matchup here?
I mean, prior to the matchup, I was not too excited. I did some last second tweaking, and actually I put in A-Chain with like 20 minutes before kickoff, and boy, was that a good decision. And I was just fired up. Obviously, that Dolphins game was so fun to watch. Um, and I was like, oh, I got this in the bag. 50 points. There's no way I'm losing this. And then, interesting enough, I was sweating it out there towards the end, especially with Jamar Chase coming Monday night. But just happy to say that we pulled it off.
Yeah, I think you had Damian Harris in that lineup for a long time, and I was like, oh shit, I'm up against 4 Bills.
I had so many Bills. I was like, this is not good.
And that has to be the roster decision of the season. I think, yeah, Damian Harris put up 1.5 points, so you got a cool plus 48 there based on that swap of running backs, which doomed me. I mean, my team, like, that's the thing is I was looking up and down my roster. I'm like, okay, my tight end didn't really play well, but everyone else put up like double-digit points. I had a really good week. I was the third highest scorer. I don't know. It's hard to beat a 49 from A-Chain,
Yeah,
or
I
however he
mean,
wants his name pronounced.
oh yeah. First of
So,
all, trying to figure out how to pronounce his name was a whole nother mess. But luckily, he scored 4 touchdowns, so I got to hear it enough on TV. But yeah, I mean, matchup wise, you beat me pretty much across the board. And like I said, I was still sweating it out last night, like hoping Jamar Chase didn't pop off for like a 25 burger or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you had a
It
good
was.
week besides like even without H-Chan. So like it's good that your team is finally showing up. Nick, you just got unlucky. There's nothing you can do about that. You're putting up 150 and your opponent
Yeah,
has a 50 burger on his team. Like both teams played well, but when someone has 4 touchdowns and it's like his rookie debut, that's just there's nothing you can do. That's unbelievable coaching right there from Mr. Willie Walsh.
Thank you, Colin. I really thank you for the flowers. It's about time you gave me some credit.
Yeah,
yeah.
you live by the Bills, die by the Bills, and they paid back with dividends this week, man. And also a Debo Samuel sighting. Is he back? Is Debo back? Like he kind of disappeared for a little bit, but now he's back. So
Could be.
yeah, man, great fucking call this week.
I do appreciate continuing to start Kadarius Toney. I think there's probably, if I looked at sleeper, it's probably 0.1% of managers who are starting Toney at this point, and you might be that 0.1%.
Listen, that's my guy. I mean, in the post draft podcast, Cam broke it down really well. I just went and got my guy. That was a get your guy pick, and you got to give your guy a few weeks to see if he can, break out. Obviously, week 1 was very, very dark times, but we let him in there. I'm a little bummed I didn't start Thielen just because, again, I was like definitely, checking the score a lot last night. And Thielen, if I started Thielen, it would have been an easy dub. I'm not out on Tony yet. I still think he's got, some spark, but I think I'm gonna give him a break this week.
Yeah, you got to start Thielen now, right? Especially after Thielen's game, you got to start him next week, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I love what's his name? Who's the quarterback for Carolina now? The redhead
Dalton,
guy.
Dalton.
Dalton.
Yeah,
the
like I
red
love
rifle.
Dalton having the veteran, looking for a veteran. I like that a lot more than with Bryce Young.
For sure.
Yeah, you have wide receiver number 9 on your bench, and Tony is wide receiver number 106 so far this
Yo,
year.
wait,
So
you kind of
Listen,
look
it's
like
early.
Thielen. We were just talking about how you look like somebody. You look like Thielen, bro.
What's up, King?
I'm sticking with my Dansby Swanson comparison.
I like
I
that
like
one. All
that one.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't sleep on those Kansas City wide receivers. I mean, all Kadarius has to do is just bag like Ice Spice this week on a date, and I don't know. Kelsey went off. Like, all you got to do is have him start dating some crazy big celebrity, and he might pop off.
Yeah, just hopefully he doesn't get arrested or anything.
Yeah.
I've heard some rumors.
Can't do much worse than 1 catch for -1 yards. That's a tough game.
Yeah.
I feel like
So
At least
I was
he
gonna
caught
say-
it.
yeah. One last thing, I feel like Nick, you've been kind of bouncing around between week, between starting Jared Goff and starting Kirk Cousins, and you've been kind of burned each time that you made the other decision. But this week, I think he's like the number 1 quarterback in fantasy right now.
Yeah.
So I know that
One or two, yeah.
late round draft is looking pretty good right now. QB2.
Yeah, I think we're going to stick with Kirk. He seems to be playing in a lot of negative game scripts, a lot of times where the Vikings need to air that ball out late in the game. So there's a lot of times where I kind of look at halftime and Goff has more points, and then by the end of the game, Cousins has made it up because they're just throwing the entire second half. So we're probably gonna leave Kirk in there. I was kind of jealous last season of Johnny 3 having Kirk and made him like my late round QB target. So I think we gotta roll with him. So I've got a shine or shade for you here, and this will tie into our guest of the week. Willie getting off the schneid, getting 2 wins, moves himself up into 8th place. Shine or shade, Willie gets his squad into the playoffs this season.
What you got to say, Colin?
Yeah, no, I mean, ask me this a week ago, ask me this 2 weeks ago. It's an easy answer, no shot. But after this week, especially not only did you just pop off, but Troy's team is going to be the most roller coaster team this season. Cam, it was a rough week, and it's hard to find some positivity there. And then we know about Johnny and Alex's teams; they need some work as well. So I'm going to shine that. I think he might be making it the playoffs easily. I mean, I don't know. You just these guys once they have one good week, you can see all the positivity. But this guy Devon A-Chain, I think I don't know what to think, but obviously he's capable. So we'll see what he can do in that. I think that speed offense, the Miami Dolphins are going to be insane if they can like find a balance. And if he's going to be their number 1, I mean, I don't know if Mostert's got it. He's got an injury record. A-Chain could be this new guy that just pops out of nowhere, and that'll make your team so much stronger, especially in the long haul. So yeah, I think he makes playoffs. Yeah, fine.
I'm going to shine it for the same reason. I mean, Willie in his own right did great this week, but you look at the 4 teams below Willie, myself included. I think that these 4 teams far and away are the worst 4 teams in the league right now. And I don't think that gap between 9 and 8 is going to get any smaller. I think that the top 8 teams have really separated themselves through the first 3 weeks. So I think I'm going to shine that as well. I think Willie's a playoff team.
Yeah, I'm going to shine it as well. I realize if you kind of put that 49 back to like a normal number in terms of points scored this season, he's kind of right around those other 4 teams. But I do think A-Chain is going to be a stud moving forward. Probably not going to put up 49 points per week the rest of the season, if I had to guess. But I mean, I think Willie's method to his madness is just find 2 running backs and put wide receivers everywhere he can. And he's got wide receivers, that can get the job done up and down the roster. Especially if he decides that Tony is better served on his bench than in his starting lineup. I think this roster is probably good enough to get one of the top 8 spots.
Yeah, I think we all know what my hole is. And obviously I drafted strategically that way. Like I didn't just, not draft a running back for no reason. I've sort of planned this out and sort of trying to plug that as the season goes on. I'm just so skeptical about running backs in general when it comes to injury, age, shared usage. And I really, in the draft, I was targeting just all rookie running backs, and hopefully, one of them or two of them would, step up. But glad I got A-Chain.
Well, they definitely did. One of them at least did.
Yeah.
So you got one of them, that's for damn sure. Because even after a game like that, it could be a one-off, but I doubt it. I mean, you see, he's going to fit into that offense. He's kind of like a missing piece looking kind of guy.
And that's exactly what I said when I saw him on the draft board. I was like, that offense, his speed, it's going to work out great. I drafted him mostly off of the Dolphins offense.
Yeah.
I think Willie Walsh is looking like Willy Wonka, and A-Chain could be his golden ticket this season.
Tap in, baby, tap in.
All right, let's move on to the most lopsided matchup this week. We had a team in Rob who was 3-1 coming into the week just get absolutely smacked by Eric, 182-95. Thoughts on this beatdown?
Yeah, I mean, it's Eric. He's got a strong team, 32 from the Bills defense. You're not going to see that often, but when it happens, it's nice, especially when you got another 40 burger and a 35er in your heavy hitters. His heavy hitters really did the heavy lifting. But then on the other hand, on the other side of the ball, I don't know if Rob's going to be scoring under 100 a lot. So it's good that he got his bad week out of the way against a big Eric win rather than it being like a heavyweight out down there in the low scoring ranges. But I'm not sure Rob's going to go under 100 a lot. So it's kind of a lopsided game. That's all there is to it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the highest score of the week versus the lowest score of the week. It's funny, going back to what we said about Willie. Willie had a similar draft profile last year, right? He loaded up wide receivers, in that same thread. I mean, Eric's team looks just as scary as it did last year. I know you're not going to get 41 from Mostert every week, but you could expect maybe 30 from Devontae Adams every couple of weeks, right? So his team is looking just as deep as ever. Defense showing out. So it's just funny the similar threads season over season with these different owners.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens to Eric's team over the season. I wonder what role Jeff Wilson will have in the backfield when he comes back for the Dolphins. Like, does he just become RB3 now for the Dolphins, or does he take away some carries from Mostert and A-Chain? And is that just a three-headed monster where, maybe any one of them could be performing on a given week? And Tua, I mean, the question with him has never been talent, right? Like, I think the reason others might have stayed away from him earlier in the draft is purely based on injuries. So as long as, his nickname on Eric's team is "Please Don't Die," right? So that says it all. Like if he stays healthy, Eric's team is going to be really, really good. And if he doesn't, he's got to go to Brock Purdy, who's not a bad backup, but certainly not going to perform week to week like Tua does.
Yeah, he 23 of 26.
What was that, Willie?
I wish I had his running backs, man. He's got some strong running backs. Bijan Robinson, obviously, really exciting player to watch. Rob on the other side, starting two running backs for the Eagles in the same night. I mean, I almost made the same mistake with the Bills, but it's tough. And then the Cowboys didn't look like the Cowboys at all. But
no.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Colin, you were saying at the beginning, a good week for Rob to kind of have a bad week, given he was up against Eric, putting up 185. I agree. I don't think you're going to see him under 100 much.
No, he's got a solid enough team. Dallas Cowboys probably won't have another negative game all season unless I guess they like Josh Dobbs again somehow. But yeah, I like Rob's team. I think this is just wash it, move on to the next one. Nothing much to read into.
Yeah.
I want to quickly ask the panic meter. I know Rob's 3-3 squarely in the thick of the race. He did make a post in the group chat earlier this week that he's looking for aid at the running back position. On a scale of 1 to 10, panic meter for Rob right now after this week.
I'm going to go pretty low. I'm going to go a 2. I still think like at the other positions, he's got dudes. And as Willie was saying, I mean, it can be a winning strategy to kind of wait for the war of attrition in the running back rooms across the league and, use your fab to get a guy who becomes a starting running back. So, I mean, I don't think his running back room is terrible. You could see like Zeke becoming the guy if Ramondre has an injury. You could see Clyde Edwards. I mean, he had a good week, right? He scored a touchdown, got 15 carries. Tank if something happens to what's his face at ETN, you can see him being the guy. So I'm going to keep it low for Rob. I think Rob's got a good enough roster as is to get himself into the playoffs, and it'll probably get better.
I think I mean I'd put it probably closer to the 4 or 5 range. I think he has a good roster. It's not a set it and forget it though. Like he's gonna have to be checking week to week, checking matchups, seeing who his guys are going up on the defensive side. So it's not like his wide receivers aren't amazing standout guys. So he's got to really be vigilant if he wants to be competitive, I'd say.
Yeah, I would put it medium to low as well, maybe 3 or 4, just because Swift is a good enough running back to have as like his only running back, and then the second running back is like touchdown dependent, whereas his receivers will cover him. This was a low week from all of them, but I think they can have big weeks, and Swift is good enough to carry the running back room per se. I'm not panicking. I like his team. He doesn't really have much of a bench. It's kind of injury dependent, but like that will pan out in the long run towards later stages of the season. I'm don't think he's really panicking much, if at all.
I'm going to stick with Willie on the 4 to 5 range. My only question mark on his roster is he started 2 tight ends, Tyler Higbee being one, and he actually had a pretty decent game, but you're not going to start Higbee at the flex every single week. And I'm looking at folks who we plug in at the flex. There's no buys this week. He's a little bit, has 2 empty bench spots. Maybe you put Clyde in there depending on who the Patriots play. Maybe you plug in Zeke, but I agree. He's going to be looking at defensive matchups for that last flex spot during the week. And that's why I put it higher than a 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5, just because of that one particular spot in his lineup.
That's fair. Yeah, he could get aggressive in fab this week and find a guy to plug that hole too. I think we'll talk about it, but it's a pretty good week for available players.
Oh yeah, there it is.
All right, the appropriately named My Butker Hurts. Alex drops to 0-6 on the season. A distant last in the league currently up against Team Trevor, who is 3-3. Some question his draft strategy, reaching early for San Francisco defense and Tucker, but the man has himself sitting there at 500 despite playing Aaron Jones, who was out for the game. Thoughts on Trevor sticking it to Alex by playing an injured player and still getting the win?
Yeah, I think Trevor's a tough out, even when he's playing an injured player. I think he's going to be a solid team all around. You don't want to have a low week against Trevor because he'll probably just beat you out. I mean, Alex probably won't score over 100 a lot. So this was a good week for him. An easy week for Trevor, I mean. But just generally, I think playing Trevor, you got to watch out. You can't lose focus. You got to play your best lineup against Trevor because he'll show up week in, week out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor kind of, when I'm thinking about the draft, I think that Trevor got a lot of guys, particularly Kelsey, right? But Trevor got a lot of guys that I think that Alex might have been targeting. They're kind of close in the draft over there. This is I think this comes down to draft strategy. Jalen Hurts obviously didn't have his best week. Garrett Wilson is not going to be the guy we thought he was after Rodgers goes down, right? But I mean, all across the board, Trevor made a trade for Zach Moss this week, who dropped almost 22, right? So that's a pretty big pickup, even with, makes up for that Aaron Jones flex missing spot. Yeah, Trevor's suddenly a pretty deep team, which I don't think a lot of us were thinking when we first made these draft picks. But yeah, Trevor's looking pretty good so far.
Yeah, I like the look of his team a lot. I mean, he's got depth on the wide receiver side for sure. I don't know. Definitely going to be dangerous.
I agree.
I don't mind
the
reaches in the draft.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a wide receiver trio that I fear more than St. Brown, Olave, and Metcalf. That's pretty strong. Those are three guys that I love and was hoping would fall to me in the draft, and just none of them did at the right spot. But yeah, I mean, I think Trevor has played fantasy before in this league back in the day and in other leagues, and he's gonna be able to flex his muscle for sure. He's gonna be a force to be reckoned with throughout the season.
He has enough guys to where, like, if some don't do well, the other guys probably will. So he'll just constantly be, probably an above average scoring team. And that's why you can't let your guard down just because you're playing Trevor this week. It's more of you got to make sure you got all your guys in and you're ready for a heavyweight bout per se.
So I've got a shiner shade here. Alex 0-6, a distant last in the league currently. Shiner shade, does Alex beat the median at some point this season?
Yeah, I think he'll beat the median one of these weeks. We got bye weeks ahead of us. He might get lucky and have none of his guys on bye where some of the more important guys are on bye that week. So I'd say if it's a low scoring week, like maybe a 110 median or 115, I think he can get above that. But if it'll be once or twice, it won't happen often, but I think he'll do it. Shine that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna shine that too. We had the highest median of the year so far this year, 125. That's pretty brutal. Or 128,
yeah.
Right? So
yeah.
I think he'll get it eventually. We still a long season to go. I think Nick has a couple season-ending injury predictions coming up and some buys. So teams will definitely score. I mean, Johnny scored 60 in his first game. So teams will rebound. I think that he has to make some moves, use his fab a little bit. There's some players who are underperforming. I don't know if Rashad Bateman is not even rosterable, let alone startable in this league. So he's not really playing. Some of his players disappointing. I'm going to say that he bounces back. He beats the median at least once. If he beats another team head to head, another question.
Yeah, I'll shine that as well. I think he's got a few guys with some star power that could definitely go off for a multiple touchdown game that could help him out a lot. So I'll shine that.
I'll go the other way. I'm going to shade it. I think Hurts is a good player and is going to consistently perform at the top of the lineup. But looking down the roster, I mean, I could make an excuse for why every single one of the rest of the guys on his roster could have a bad week on any given week. I don't see another stud on the roster. And
Eckler, but he's hurt.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, he has the starting running back for the Chargers, whoever it is, right? But like the guy is dealing with an injury and the backup just averaged 1 yard a carry, right? So that's my point. It's like, could Garrett Wilson have a great week? Yes, but he also has Zach Wilson as his quarterback, right? Like George Kittle hasn't looked the same this year, even though like historically he's been great. So I don't think Alex will go winless all season, but my bet is that any wins he has will come against an opponent that's also on a bad week and not actually doing better than 6 teams in the league that week.
He has Taysom Hill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
he does.
You're going to get Taysom Hill week. It comes around once a year. He just needs to start Taysom Hill the right week, and that's it.
It's
Do they
tough
play
when
on
you
Thanksgiving this year?
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's Thanksgiving. Yeah.
It's tough when you go tight end deep in the draft because you're kind of banking on the rest of your starters to kind of be studs, and you've just kind of been bit with the indirect injury bug, right? Where Josh Kelly isn't really performing, right? Garrett Wilson, Nick hit on the head. Zach Wilson's probably not going to be the guy for the rest of the season, let alone the next couple of weeks. So you got to make sure your other guys, especially your flex players, which you only got 5 points from them this week. You got to make sure your other flex players say you're going to go tight end deep, and unfortunately bit him in the ass this week.
All right, Cam. We had a matchup of our 2 other podcast hosts this week. A loss for the 1-5 defending champ, at the hands of the 6-0 this my year squad, who is coming off a season where he had the worst record in the league and is now unbeaten. Thoughts you two on your matchup here?
Yeah, I think the quarterbacks kind of say it all. Like T-Law is just not having himself a year. Maybe they're playing tough defenses. Maybe it's just I don't know if they have a new coaching staff or what the difference is this year in Jacksonville, but T-Law isn't doing it. And then on the other hand, Justin Herbert is doing it. He fell off a little bit last year, but I think Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator is really singing in his ear the right notes. And he's showing up. I think he's the number 2 quarterback. Right there says it all. And even this week specifically, Herbert with 30, T-Law with under 15. So tale of 2 quarterbacks, tale of 2 teams there.
Yeah, I mean, that's your quarterback is probably the highest, with the exception of maybe Christian McCaffrey or Devon Achane. Like they're usually going to be the highest scorer in their team every week, and T-Law has just not done it for me this year. But the rest of my roster, my team hasn't really clicked together on 1 week so far this year. 1 week Brees Hall's going off, that same week. AJ Brown is not playing well. This week Kenneth Walker went off, but then of course, the rest of my receivers didn't really do too much. I need that help from my quarterback to get me over the edge. I mean, this game was a little bit closer than I think the final score showed. Like if, looking at the Monday night game in Los Angeles, I think Kyron Williams had a chance to score on that last drive. He was stopped at the 1, but I mean, the touchdown there could have made this game a lot closer. I just need my team to click. And the issue is my team isn't particularly deep on the bench either. I'm kind of, that Cam Akers trade isn't looking so good 1 week in. But my receiver depth isn't really that great. So I really just need my guys to do what they do, but unfortunately this hasn't happened so far this year.
It's tough, bro.
Yeah, for Colin's team, I mean, I thought post draft, like as long as McCaffrey stays healthy, this is going to be a really good squad. It's kind of like Tua for Eric, right? Like as long as that guy is in the lineup, like this is a fearsome roster. And obviously, I think McCaffrey was your first round pick, Colin. So you could say that for pretty much anybody with their first round pick. But you got him where you got him based on the fact that he had some injury history. And so he didn't go in front of some of the wide receivers who went earlier. He looks great. I think what has he scored so far? Yeah, he's the number 2 running back, right? He's put up more than 20 points a week. So as long as you can be counting on that, I think this is going to be a really, really difficult team to beat. You've got some guys who like Tutu, who I didn't think were going to be as good as they have been so far this season. And guys like Tank Dell on your bench, right, who are performing. I mean, you're making the 3 defense strategy work right now, carrying 2 on the bench, which is an unpopular play. But credit to the GM. He's got his team rolling. On the other end, I mean, I still think Cam's team is gonna come together, like you were saying, Cam. It just hasn't gelled yet, but I mean, there's a lot of guys there. I think Kyron is going to be like a steal that you got kind of later in the draft. Didn't really perform this week, but I think he will as the season moves on. So, I would keep the panic meter for you pretty low. But you got to say Colin's team looks really, really difficult right now to get a win against.
Yeah. I think it was an Eric versus Rob mini, dialed back version. It wasn't my best week, but I guess it was a good week to not have my best week against 135.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be panicking, Cam. The only thing I would say though is I think your guys are a little bit home run dependent. Like, I mean, Brees Hall on a bad offense, you're kind of waiting for him to have one good run, and that's a good game. Kenneth Walker finally showed up for them, but between CeeDee Lamb, Gabe Davis, and Michael Thomas, I mean, CeeDee Lamb can have a consistently good week in, week out, but like Gabe Davis and Mike Thomas, I think they're going to be kind of touchdown dependent guys this year, and that's hard to have 2 of them in your receiver spot. I do like your roster, but some of these peripheral guys, are a little bit too touchdown dependent, and maybe they hit, maybe they don't.
Yeah, I agree with that, Colin. It's a little boomer bust. I don't know, Cam. I don't know how you feel about Michael Thomas. I stayed the hell away from him. I couldn't put any stock in him. But again, it's like I would hate to regret that because he was so talented a few years ago.
Yeah, it was interesting. Around that time, I traded for a pick. He wasn't going to fall to me in another. When I had my original pick, I think I traded for that pick. He's been okay so far. I mean, he's gotten around 9 points, 8 to 9 points each week. I'm curious to see how he plays with Jameis at the quarterback. I don't think Derek Carr is going to play for a week or two. Maybe he can, rekindle some of that, fire that he's had a couple years ago. But you're right. I think a lot of these guys are a little bit boomer bust. And unfortunately, they busted this week.
Yeah, it pains me to see Michael Thomas not just kind of being a shell of himself. I think he has that elite receiver talent. He's the size. He had the quarterback. I've actually met him, so that just puts another egg in his basket. But um, it's tough seeing Mike Thomas not be what we wish he could still be.
Yeah, because he was a first round draft pick a couple of seasons ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with Drew Brees, he could have been the number one receiver for a while. I think he finished, or let's see. Yeah, he finished number one receiver in 2019. So he's had that, you know, um, he's had that elite season. I can't believe that the desktop version of Sleeper doesn't have the history tab, but on mine he was, his first 4 seasons he was 7, 6, 6, and 1.
Yeah, I got it here.
Oh, there it is. Nice. Yeah, that's insane. Like he was gonna be so good, and then just a couple injuries, and you're done ski. It's tough to see.
Yeah.
Should have got that ankle insurance.
All right, on to another matchup of the surprising 5-1 Smoking Jays taking down a free falling Kapuka Shells matchup here. And I want to talk about a potential trade that was nixed earlier today at once we're through this matchup.
Oh, that didn't go through?
No.
No way.
Yeah. Well,
Damn,
there's all
spicy.
kinds of controversy to discuss there.
Damn, dude,
We'll
I'm
have to
wondering
get
what's
the
going on.
commissioner's official statement on that.
Holy shit,
but
Commissioner, it's a big moment for you, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're talking about it. Look, I
all
saw
right,
it go
let's start
through.
there. Let's start there with the Joe Burrow for Justin Fields trade that was nixed,
Yeah.
despite both parties approving it.
I mean, I saw it go through, and just like everyone else, I'm pretty sure everyone's jaw hit the ground. Like Fields for Burrow, straight up, no way. I need to refresh. I need to make sure that this is what I'm seeing. Um, and I was like, all right. I mean, look, if he approved it, he clearly is out on Burrow for this season. And he's taking a chance on Fields. So whoever, I don't know who sent it originally and who accepted it. But I passed, I voted for the pass because I figured, whatever. I think they both know what they're doing. And then I don't know how long after it, Troy just texted me saying, hey, I'm messing with Josh, like refuse that or cancel it. I'm like, I don't think I can just cancel a trade like that. You guys both accepted. I'm not sure what people would think of that. Like, I can't just do that. And he goes, no, I told Josh, like I was gonna be messing with him the whole time. It was all a joke. And so I was like, you know what, fine. He showed me the receipts of the text between him and Josh. I was like, you know what, fine. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You're just messing with him. So I canceled it right away. That obviously shocked everyone. But then he said he might still do it, or he's gonna try and get more out of Josh for him. So I was just like,
Whoa,
oh
dude.
man. I mean, I can tell you this: if
Is
that
this
the whole point of that,
confidential?
a bit it might be, but too bad. You can't just like
I
fuck
put
with
my
the trade
earbuds
gods
on,
like
dude.
that. No. But this is like the first example of like, if you're gonna put a trade through, that's the whole point of the system. If there's a trade in the system and you accept it and that's what it is, that's the trade. There's no, oh, I'm messing with them. Oh no, I pressed the wrong button. No, you fucking didn't. If you put the trade through, that's the trade. I send screenshots of my trade offers so I know that it's more of like a, hey, check this out, rather than a trade offer. And I just want to make that clear. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and we've learned from this. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it seems like Josh was okay with the outcome. He didn't protest too much. But I agree. I mean, I'm a contract lawyer. So to me, you had there an offer and acceptance. And so that, in my contracts class would be considered a binding agreement. So I would have been okay with saying, no, that it's been accepted, and if the league votes to approve it, then it's a valid deal. I mean, honestly, like I was a little surprised, and if I had Joe Burrow, I probably wouldn't trade him for Justin Fields. But from a fantasy standpoint, I could kind of see it. Like it wasn't,
Yeah.
to me, it wasn't like such a one-sided trade where I was like, no, like this is someone like tanking or just messing around or something. I mean, Joe Burrow obviously doesn't run a lot, and especially with a calf, is not going to run a lot. He's clearly a better thrower of the football from an objective standpoint, but in terms of fantasy points, they've been pretty similar this year, and Fields was great last year too. So I mean, I didn't have a problem with it as like a legit fantasy trade if both parties were okay with that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It didn't raise my eyebrow too much. I'm kind of out on both of them, but like you said, I mean, Fields is sort of playing for his job right now, which could be good fantasy wise. He could be trying to do the most. And Joe Burrow, I just don't think he's a stud fantasy wise. I think he might get a lot better as the season goes on, but I wasn't shocked by any means.
Yeah, I agree. I think as the trade stands, I mean, you look at it from a fantasy perspective so far this season, Justin Fields is the better quarterback. I think that there's a little bit of politics going on in the NFL at large outside of fantasy that might say that his job is at risk. I really don't know how true that is. I think the Bears just kind of stink. I think a couple things here. As soon as the trade went through, there was a couple comments immediately after the trade, talking about how it might have been one-sided, or it was a bit surprising. But when the trade was canceled, I think 4 folks had already voted to approve it or to pass it through, right? So there was obviously some sort of like consensus agreement that it wasn't as one-sided as we thought it was going to be. I side with Nick on this. I think that I don't really want to use the trade platform as a way to play practical jokes on people, even if this was a
Clean it up, commish.
yeah,
Clean it up, commissioner.
I think the context behind this trade is that last year, or 2 years ago, Troy got Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp for pennies on the dollar from Josh, and this is the kind of way to rub that back in, I guess, rub salt in the wound. I mean, Josh is still 6-0, Troy is on the outside looking in, but I personally think that we probably should have let the trade go through. I don't really want to make the trade platform a way to mess around with other managers in the league. Like if you agree to do a trade, I think that these things should stand.
Yeah, no, this definitely won't be happening again. But what we can do is I can put it back to a vote. So everyone who's listening, when you hear this, put a vote in, say put the trade through or cancel the trade, and we'll go based on that decision. I'm totally okay with doing that because I agree. I don't think you can just send a trade, it gets accepted, and then say it's a practical joke when you just get cold feet, So
Yeah,
I gave him
I can do that with
vote.
so many things in life.
Yeah. So
I mean, my view is, and this is kind of what I was alluding to, that I would put it up to Josh. Like I'm ceding my vote to Josh, basically. If he's okay with it was a joke and I didn't really want to go through with it, then I'm okay with it. But if he wanted to, like, this kind of happened in the other league that we're in, where like I had made a trade offer that was verbally accepted, and then people started ragging on like the terms of the trade, and the other trade partner didn't want to go through with it anymore. And fortunately that the person on the other side of that trade said like, no, I understand that I had like accepted the deal, and so like let's just do the trade. But like to me, I think it's on the people in the trade to say like whether they're okay with it or not. So if Josh is fine with just like moving on, then I'm fine with moving on. But to me, if he was like, no, we had an accepted deal, you offered it to me and I accepted it and the league was going to approve it, then I'm all in favor of like making it go through.
Agreed.
Agreed.
All right, Josh, when you hear this, tell us in the text what you want to do, because we will vote for it, or we'll just leave it as it is, and just it won't, once the trade's in the system, that's what the trade is. So there's no going back or anything. So
If Josh is smart, he will use this to extract more value from Troy and say, I can force you to give me Joe Burrow at this point. So you have to swap running backs with me or something if you want to keep Joe Burrow. That's what I would do now if I was in Josh's shoes. Okay, we didn't even talk about the matchup. So Jason beat Troy. It was pretty sound. Obviously, Joe Burrow did not play well. Josh Reynolds, for the first time this season, did not have a good game. No targets, no receptions. Braxton Berrios didn't come through. The only one, it seems, on the Miami offense not to score more than 40 fantasy points.
yeah.
Thoughts on Troy's loss here?
I think Jason, you said it, he's still surprising us. He's just got a good, solid team. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is the #1 overall pick, so he's gonna get you 20 a game. But it's kind of other guys showing up when the main guys aren't. I mean, Mike Williams had a good game, but he's gonna be out for the rest of the season. And then I said it earlier with Troy, he's gonna be the roller coaster team, up and down. He's gonna be going through the highest of highs and lowest of lows, week in, week out this whole season. He needs to get some of these guys back. I mean, Odell might be past it, but definitely Waddle and Watson. But he's going to be up and down all season. Whereas Jason, once he gets those two, I think Kamara's back this week, so that's going to be huge for Jason. And the fact that he's 5-1, getting some guys back, he's a scary team.
Agreed. Jason took a year off last year, but he is back to his old ways. Mike Williams is a pretty big component of that thrashing this week. So interesting to see who he plugs in. I mean, he has depth at receiver. Kamara comes back. CJ Stroud looking like a world beater so far in the NFL perspective. He's got depth like he always does. So I don't know. He's suddenly back in the top 3. Jury's still out on how well I think he finishes. I think he has obviously some injury situations to figure out. Troy's kind of up and down, right? So I don't know. This is a statement win by Jason. He's 5-1 now. He's kind of hanging with the big dogs up top, squarely in the 3rd ranked position in the standings. So I don't know. I mean, I guess this is kind of an impromptu shine or shade, but do you think that shine or shade that Jason finishes in the top, one of the top 4 seeds come playoff time?
I'd shine it. I think he's just got enough talent. Can't deny it.
Yeah, I agree. He hasn't actually scored that many points relative to some of the teams around him. But we said at the post draft pod or mid draft pod, almost post draft pod, that you wanted to get Jason early, right? Because he was going to have Jonathan Taylor and Kamara coming back, and that team was going to get stronger as the year went on potentially. And he's 5-1 without those guys. So I think you would expect this team to get better from a 5-1 position. So I think he'll finish about there.
Yeah, I think he's 5th in points for, but still 4th in the standings, or 3rd in the standings. 5th in points for. Yeah, he's only going to get stronger. He's going to be the Derrick Henry of this season, where he'll just get better and better each week, and especially in the playoffs. That's a tough look, playing Kamara and Jonathan Taylor and Justin Jefferson and Lamar Jackson like that later on in the season. That's gonna be scary. IU Pickens, like, he's got a squad. I mean, it's too bad I haven't played him yet, but I don't want to play him later, which looks like I will.
Yeah, and even if those guys come back at half or 75% of their fantasy, history, they're going to be so dangerous. I'm jealous he's got him. I'm jealous I didn't have the balls to draft him, but he did, and it's paying off now. Troy's team, I kind of compare it to mine. A lot of good names, a lot of potential to lay a goose egg like he did this week. And between him and a few other matchups that scored under 100 points. I thought that was interesting how that affected the median as well. So it'll be interesting to see with a few of these boomer bust teams how it could sort of affect the median also week to week.
Yeah, I think Troy had a lot of faith in JSN, who hasn't really performed so far this season. He's wide receiver 93 through 3 weeks. I personally don't really believe in rookie wide receivers. I feel like they take a year to adjust to the NFL. It's a lot harder as a wide receiver than a running back to get going in your rookie year. So it'll be interesting to see if JSN comes on later in the season, or if Troy was a year too early on that. I do think, the blessing he has is that Christian Watson hasn't been available yet off his bench. So, I mean, this is really a matchup of two teams that have guys that they've been waiting to get in the lineup. And I think Watson will be a stud. I mean, the Packers offense, honestly, as a Packers fan, looks better than I expected. And I think Watson will be a good weapon that can plug one hole at least in Troy's lineup. But I think, talking about the trade again, I mean, I think Troy probably needs to take some big swings. I was kind of in his shoes last year where I was looking like I was going to be on the outside looking in of the playoff race, and tried to just make some trades happen. Like I traded Nick Chubb, made some trades where, I was betting on guys having upside later in the season, and just trying to shake the roster up a little bit. And I came up one spot short of the playoffs. I think Troy's kind of in that spot right now where, whether it's trading Joe Burrow or just making some trades for some guys who have started the season down but might perform better, he probably needs to kind of take some big swings.
I think shine or shade, do we see a trade this week? Do we see our first player and player trade this week, shine or shade?
I'm going to say shine. I feel like teams have seen enough of their players have seen enough of their teams now to kind of know where they stand, and to kind of get a sense for, do they need to make a move? So yeah, I think we'll start to see some activity pick up. I'm going to say shine.
We already saw our first player for player trade last week, but I think we do see a trade again this week. And I think it comes from one of the bottom 4 teams in the league right now. Like I said before for Willie's game, I think there's a pretty big drop off once you get from the 8 seed down. And, I think Johnny can turn it around, but I think that these 4 teams are squarely the worst 4 teams in the league. And I don't think we're deceived by the standings. I think that we probably will see a trade between one of these 4 teams this week. I think shine that.
Yeah, I don't know. I might just shade it. I'm not ready to trade, me personally. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'll shine it just because there's a chance that we might have one already gone through. We just haven't voted on it yet.
Yeah,
I did forget about Zach Moss versus Cam Akers. Obviously, Zach Moss won the week 1 matchup. I think he had 21, and Cam Akers didn't even play.
He didn't even play.
So that's a good start for that trade. I think we will see a trade beyond the one that might be already in processing, because I know I'm going to be sending stuff out. Willie, I know you just said otherwise. I think you should be looking at stuff. I know you have an insane 50 burger running back right now, but that 50 burgers are super rare. So
me an offer, bro. It's on the table.
Okay, I would
let's have a trade live. Let's do a trade live on the podcast.
Live trade?
I will give you.
Wait, is it a joke?
I'll give you Javonte Williams and Tutu Atwell for Devin A-Chain.
Who? Tennessee Williams?
No, I just thought of that. Javonte Williams and Tutu Atwell.
Send it my way. I'll look at it.
Okay.
I think there's going to be a lot of trade propositions this week. I don't know if any of them are going to go through.
If you have a trade proposition, send it in the group chat so everyone can see it and weigh their thoughts in. How about that? That's the new rule. But yeah, Shine, I think there will be a trade this week. Yes.
And moving on to the last matchup of the week, I already talked about him a little bit in terms of the trade conversation, but Josh, the other unbeaten remaining in this league, puts up 140 yet again, despite having a bad week from Justin Fields and a bad week from Derrick Henry, and defeats Johnny, who only mustered 98 points from his roster.
Yeah, this is Josh just being consistent. I mean, Tyreek with 26, Keenan Allen with 36. That'll get you wins all day long. What's that? 62 between two players. That's usually the formula for success. So even if everyone's just doing okay, or some people pop off, Josh has the guys. And then Johnny kind of with another dud. I think his roster is better than his record, but that's fantasy football. I don't know if that win is against the median or not. But I think just like Cam's team, it will click eventually. It just hasn't found a groove early in the season. I think he's a guy that's in the trade rumors. But if we're going to the panic meter, I don't know if I'm panicking on Johnny's team. I'd probably be a 5 or 6, but I wouldn't consider that a panic yet.
Colin, you said you like Tyreek Hill?
I mean, he's good. Yeah,
He's
okay.
good. He's the best play. He's the best in fantasy football. He's the best football player in fantasy football.
Do you
Remember
think
what
so?
you said last year when I took him number 2 overall?
I don't know. I don't remember what I said last year when you said.
You laughed at me, bro. He's the best.
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Tyreek
It is
Hill
on
is the
YouTube.
best fantasy player to have on your team. Trust me, I know from experience. Yeah, it's dangerous. I hate to go up against Tyreek Hill.
I hate to prove you wrong, but it looks like Raheem Mostert actually has more points in fantasy.
Come on, let's be honest. Raheem Mostert going to be doing it in week 14, like Tyreek Hill is going to do it week in and week out.
Probably not, but right now the best fantasy football player is currently Raheem Mostert.
So there's more recordings of you putting your foot in your mouth right there. Okay.
Okay.
What's one thing about Tyreek that's wild is in 2 weeks he's played like 66 and 53% of the snaps, and he had 39 and 26 points in those 2 weeks. The week he played almost 90%, he only had 12 points. It's like the less he plays, the more he scores. It's weird.
Yeah.
MVP.
Yep. And at least one touchdown in every game. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that boy's ridiculous. Josh obviously has a very, very talented team. I'll be curious to see. I mean, I don't think you're going to see Derrick Henry run it 11 times for 20 yards very often. So, but those rushing attempts were way down. Obviously the Titans offense sucked this week, but it'll be interesting to see. I mean, my take on Josh's team the whole season has been, if Derrick Henry is not performing, then I'm not as scared about this roster. And I feel like this is the year where Derrick Henry is not Derrick Henry anymore. So we'll see as the year continues, but you can't argue with perfection. I mean, 6-0 is twice as many wins as I have. So he's showing out.
Yeah, I mean, he got a combined 10 points from his starting running backs, 10.7. So there's a lot of room to grow here on Josh's bench, Josh's team, which is kind of crazy to say. I think Josh actually recently changed his profile picture for his team. If you look at it, that's a picture of Troy with an X over his face.
No way. Holy shit.
I just noticed that. Yeah, I mean, Josh's team looks deep like it always does. I mean, same story as last year. He's the number one, or probably, yeah, he's the number one team by tiebreaker with points for. Do not want to play him later on the season. Unfortunately, I do. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not so sure about Johnny's team. I mean, I'm right there with him. Him and I are both 1-5. But I don't know. Josh is doing Josh things. I have a shine or shade in the general standings right now, if you guys want to take it.
Yeah.
Shine or shade, the bottom the bottom 4 teams finish in this order at the end of the regular season. Not playoffs, but regular season. That's how the bottom 4 seeds finish.
Massive shade.
Yeah, I agree with Willie. I still believe that the defending champ finds a way to move up from 10th. I do think the bottom two probably finishes in that order. And I think if Troy makes some big moves, he probably either moves up or moves down. So I wouldn't expect him to finish 9th either. But I still think, Cam, that your team has the pieces. I mean, again, you've scored a lot more points than the teams that you're around. Probably, I think you're, based on a quick look, 9th in points scored. So I would expect at least Troy and Cam to flip, unless Troy is also going to move up based on some moves. And I would expect some other teams to slip. I don't know in particular who, but based on injuries, I would expect someone else to fall into that bottom 4.
Yeah, I'd say it's just super unlikely that that's the exact order. Nick kind of made all the points, like whether these teams make moves or not, like Cam and Johnny teams, they're bound to click and find a rhythm. Troy, I think he's going to be up and down all season. So, it's just inconsistent. Can't tell, can't predict what is going to happen to him, but it's just unlikely that those 4 will stay those 4 in that order. So I'll shade that.
Yeah, we got some frauds. We got some frauds up there at the top, and I think we got some potential at the bottom.
Name names, Willie. Who's a fraud?
Check receipts.
Don't make me do it. I'm jumping Rob this week. That's a fact.
All right. I like it.
Okay, well that kind of leads us into our week 4 preview, unless we have if we want to go over waivers or any other shine or shades or anything.
Yeah, kind of related to thinking ahead to week 4 and fab and waivers and all that good stuff. Another shine or shade here. Do we see so let me put it this way: shine or shade, Alex spends his first fab dollar this week.
Shade.
It could be a shade. I think he might be done already. I mean, he's 0-6. What more can you do? There's not like a team saving player on waivers, arguably, right now. Maybe he does like a streaming defense. I don't know what the matchup is or anything, but I don't know if he's going to be spending money like that, if at all. I'll shade it as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna shade it. I mean, I don't see him spending any money this week. Just based on his, I mean, I think he sent his first message of the season in the chat earlier this week, earlier today. Sorry. So I don't know. I think he might make a big swing if he falls to 0-8. I think he'll do it next week, but I don't know if he does it this week.
Yeah. Looking back at fab in week 3 last year, we had one of the higher average spends. There were only 4 fab transactions last year in week 3, but it was a total of $31 spent. So that was $7.75 a transaction on average. Your thoughts on the amount of fab we see spent this week? I've pulled up the top 3 players available based on trends, are all Chargers, Palmer, Johnston, and Parham. You think we see more than $31 of fab spent this week?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we'll reach it because there might be some more transactions than just those top guys. I mean, you look at Chark just at the bottom there.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of guys that aren't even on this trending list that people go for every week. So it's I think each week we've seen more fob than we've expected. I think that'll continue. Yeah.
I just realized that Trevor Siemian is also trending. What does that say about Zach Wilson?
I think there's also a handful of good defensive matchups. Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of good stream defenses this week. Since he playing Tennessee, who knows what's going to happen there? Minnesota playing Carolina. Yeah, I think there's a good number of streamable defenses that are available. I think we're going to see some folks maybe pay $1 or $2 for defense.
And in case you're wondering, the highest fab spent in week 3 of last year was $15 for Richie James.
Who was that?
Was that Willie? Was that Willie?
I don't know who I should have kept who made the acquisition. That was
I do,
not
yeah.
it was
I
not
probably
tracked.
did. I think it was me.
That sounds like a Willie move.
Willie spent the
And
most on a waiver claim this past week.
Yeah.
yeah.
What
Yeah,
am I gonna do?
17.
Save my money?
17 on Latavius Murray. He got you a touchdown this week. Latavius Murray got you a touchdown. So that's $17. That's
Huge, bro.
translated to one touchdown.
Let's go. The kid's back.
Yep.
Johnny spent
Outspent Trevor by 14 for that acquisition.
You gotta
Johnny
go get your guy.
Johnny spent 10 on Matt Breida. I think his name. Yeah, Matt Breida. That was what the heck? I mean,
He
look at all
got a,
those
he got a
bids.
tutty though.
Did he? Wow.
Yeah.
This money's gonna be worthless by week 10.
The biggest thing for me was I dropped Quentin Johnston last week, and now he's going to
Yeah.
he might be the number one guy there. And I have his quarterback too, and I love my quarterback receiver stack. So, I'm disappointed I dropped Quentin. I might get him back.
Yeah, so in injury news, as you may recall, last week I had accurately predicted season-ending injury to a wide receiver. So I'm gonna double or nothing here this week. I'm gonna go running back in the AFC out for the season.
I can't
He's
afford
great
for it
on
to
the
be
That's my
downfall.
injury. That's my injury prediction. Not a top tier running back, but like a fantasy worthy player.
Okay, I'll shade that if we're shining or shading. But we've hit the hour mark, right? Or like we're over an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just about there. Yep.
Okay, no, I was just curious. Well, I have a few shiner shades myself. So the Eagles, Dolphins, and Niners are all 3-0. Do we see shiner shade? Do we see any 4-0 teams? The Eagles play the Commanders, the Finns play the Bills, and the Niners play the Cardinals. Do we see 3 4-0 or 4-0 teams?
3 of them or 1 of them?
Oh, 3 of them. Yeah, sorry. 3 of them. Do we see all 3 teams win their game this week and be 4-0?
I'll shine it. I'm ready to shine it. I think the Dolphins look way better than the Bills. I think that's the only real question mark right there. This will be a statement game for the Bills for sure, and the Dolphins. But I think the Dolphins look better at this point.
Yeah, I'll shine that too. I think rematch of a really good game last year in the snow in Buffalo. I'll shine it because I want to see the Dolphins, push the Bills a little bit. I mean, I think
4 touchdowns from A-Chain.
I mean, well, I guess there's a little. I mean, I don't think the 49ers lose, but Josh Dobbs and the Cardinals beat a really hot Cowboys team last week, pretty handedly too. So I don't know. I guess it's always a question mark for in division games, but I think the biggest question mark is Miami versus Buffalo. But I'll shine it because I want to see some crazy shit happen.
I'll shade it then. I feel like odds are that one of those teams loses. You could convince me that the Bills win. You could convince me that the Cardinals win. And I mean, it's the NFL, so sure, the Commanders could beat the Eagles. Although I think that's probably the least likely of the 3. So I think the odds of all 3 happening are probably less than 50%. I'll shade it.
That might be a good parlay.
Yeah, I was thinking the same
thing. So Kirk and Herbert are the number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks currently. Shiner shade, do we see one or both of them finish in the top 5 at the end of the year? Who both finish in the top 5 this year?
Huge shade.
I don't think Herbert will without Mike Williams. I think that wide receiver core is going to take a hit. So I don't think Johnston is going to be that guy. And I think with them being able to, double, I'm blanking on the other talented wide receiver out there for the Chargers, but
Keenan Allen.
Yeah, Keenan Allen. With them being able to blanket Keenan Allen now, I don't see Herbert having enough enough playmakers to stay in the top 5. So I'll shade it.
I will shade that as well. I don't think either of them will finish in the top 5.
It's hard for me to bet against Justin Herbert being a good fantasy quarterback. I would shine it if it was one of the two, but both. I think Kirk's going to be good. I mean, he's been good all season, and maybe they play on a lot of positive game scripts for him to play well. But I'm going to shade it, but I would have shined it if it was just one out of the two.
Yeah. Okay. And then what about Mostert? Mostert is number 1 in fantasy, number 1 running back. Does he finish top 10 at the end of the year?
No, I
that.
shade that.
Yeah. There's too much. I mean, there's too much competition in his own backfield, let alone in the rest of the league. I think he's probably scored a third of the points he's going to score all season in that one game, if not more than that. Right. So I shade that.
Okay.
Agreed. A-Chain's the number 1, obviously.
It's A-Chan, I think.
A-Chan.
Yeah.
I think A-Chain's just going to run with it, just like Travis Kelce. Apparently it's Kels, and everyone just calls him Kelsey.
I thought it was
So
Swift
the media.
Yeah, I thought it was Swift, dude.
I've got a shine or shade for us in terms of our week 4 fantasy matchups. So Skip is home against Trevor this week in our matchups, and Josh hits the road to take on the Kapuka Shells in Kapuka Shell Stadium. We see in the head-to-head? Now, yeah, it's a raucous atmosphere every time you go to Kapuka Shell. In not against the median, but in head-to-head, shine or shade, we see one of the 6-0 teams lose head-to-head this week. Colin against Trevor or Josh against Troy.
I'll shine it because it won't be me. It'll be Josh. I think Troy could have. I mean, he's up and down. I think he's lose, win, lose. So he's bound with that pattern. He's going to win this week. And then all my matchups are green. Like if you go to my team and then look at every player's opponent, it's a green or dark green, except for Ramondre. I don't know what to think of that, but that's got to be good, right? Like they're playing easy matchups, so I think that's a formula for a lot of points. And I'd love to see my team win, especially against a good Trevor team.
I mean, for the storyline, I think Colin beats Trevor this week, but I think for the storyline, I want to see Josh. Whatever happened with the trade, I think there's some karmic energy in the fantasy world that comes back, and I want to see Josh just drop 150 on him and just see what happens. I think Troy has the capability to do it too if his players pop. Joe Burrow comes back, played a weak Tennessee team, but I think karmic energy is on Josh's side. If you could will a team to victory, I think Josh has done enough screaming into a pillow today. So I think they get a dub just on sheer willpower alone.
Yeah, I had that in my notes. Will Troy show up or does Josh get karma on his side? That's all this is. This is a karma revenge game.
It's a revenge game.
I can see both of those teams being undefeated after next week.
Yeah. And one more related to our matchups next week. We were just harping on how good Eric's team is. He gets the 0-6 fighting apple bombs this week. According to the projections of the fantasy teams, Eric is only projected to win by 4 currently this week. But I would expect him to have a larger margin of victory. Over under 25-point win for Eric head-to-head against Alex this week.
I'll say over. I mean, Eric just had 180, so it's unlikely he'll have something in that range. But Alex can barely score 100. So with that, I mean, Eric only has to score 125, 130, which I think is very doable for that team. But I'm not sure he's going to be scoring 180 again. That's tough to do back-to-back weeks.
The only thing, and I'm not trying to make Eric make a decision. I know Alex might not appreciate this, but he's got Tua and Raheem Mostert playing against his Buffalo Bills defense, right? So he's got to make a defensive swap out there at some point. And I don't think he has one on his roster. So that's the only question mark I have. If he does make that change, which I hope he does, then I'll say he hits over 25-point win.
Yeah, I know a dead dog when I see one. I think it'll be over.
Yeah, I think Eric has outscored Alex by 160 through 3 weeks combined. So I'm gonna take the over as well and say it might be well over 25.
Well, with that, we ain't a dead dog, but Willie knows it if he sees it. So
You can
thanks,
smell
Willie,
it
for
first. You
coming
can
on.
actually smell it.
We appreciate your kind face and words and wise wisdom, Willie. We
Thank
are
you.
much appreciative of you.
Yo, thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate it.
Of course.
It was a good time.
Good luck.
Peace.